world's oldest constitutional democracy. The president of the world's oldest constitutional democracy. The president of the world's oldest constitutional democracy.
Okay, YouTube, you heard him. Now, I made a video on this before, and you're seeing pictures or channels of YouTube flash through the screen. Not once has any of those not said democracy or promoted democracy in one form, fashion, or another. We are not a democracy. We're not supposed to be a democracy. I'm going to be quite honest, folks. If you're not fighting for the Republic, you're not an American. Now, for many years, a lot of us thought that the United States was a republic, and we thought we knew. But for 142 years, we haven't been taught anything, not nothing, to really know that we're a republic and not a democracy. And they're doing their damnedest on every radio show, every TV program, even a hot dog commercial, a dash of democracy. Really? Folks, we're not a democracy. I feel like a conspiracy nut telling you the actual truth that we're a republic. Now, I ain't making this video to go off on anyone. I'm just showing you just a few. I'm talking a very, very, very few. Ones that are supposed to be on our side as well. But there's many, many more. Many, many more. They don't care. They're in it for the money. And I don't mean that in a bad way either. Everybody's entitled to make a living. But folks, I'm going to say this once again. If those people, along with us small-timers that don't have the big channels that can't get hundreds of thousands of views, we're in trouble. We're going to lose this battle. People need to start calling those big channel radio stations and start promoting the Act 1871, whether they want to hear it or not. Piss them off. Who cares? And as long as they don't edit it out, they'll be putting it up on YouTube. Maybe. But more than likely, they'll edit it out. Generally, that's what they do anyway. But record it yourself in another room. Have a recorder going while you're doing it, so you can record yourself on the phone and you play it so everybody can hear it. Show the people that we're a republic. Stand up for your original Constitution. Because if you don't, all of the people that you've seen in these pictures are going to lead you in that big round hole I showed y'all before, and you're just going to jump in. That's just all there is to it. There's a lot of arguing and bickering and going on about you on YouTube and social media. I can't help that. That's what you have to deal with when you're dealing with the truth. You have to deal with people that don't want to follow the truth. They want to follow the rainbow. That at the end of that rainbow, instead of it being a pot of gold, it's really a pot of shit. Now, I love my country. And I love the aspect of being free. But I've watched my freedoms since I was a kid disappear. And I see the same freedoms that I had when I was a teenager that my kids didn't have. And I know my grandkids are going to have even less freedoms than even their parents was going to have. So people, it's up to us to wake up the masses of the people to the Act 1871. We, the people. And if we don't do that, just like all the other videos that I make, when I talk about the Act 1871 or say anything, they don't get views. But it's up to y'all. You either want the truth or you want the rainbow that's full of shit. So with that, much love to y'all. And y'all have a great day and a great evening. And think about what I just said. And listen to the Young Turk here at the end. Much love.
We can make a difference in our government, that we can get our democracy back. Yes, we believe. I remember